There is no shortage of professional football players who burst onto the scene and look like they're about to be surefire Hall of Fame inductees, only then to fall short.
Do you consider yourself a Hall of Famer?
Yeah, of course.
Right.
Of course. Nobody put up TDs the way I put up.
Typically, the players fall short due to injuries, or maybe legal troubles. However, there's another category. So, how about we take a look at 10 players, ones who looked like they were going to be Hall of Famers, but fell short due to forgetting how to play. Kenny Golladay, wide receiver. The Northern Illinois product was selected by Detroit in the 3rd round of 2017, and despite the later selection, he immediately showed a lot of promise. At 6'4", his build gave him excellent ball jumping skills, which translated into back-to-back 1,000-yard receiving seasons, earning a Pro Bowl berth when he led the league with 11 touchdowns in 2019. He was limited to only 5 games in 2020 when he suffered a hip flexor strain, but reported to training camp in 2021 fully healthy. He had to be in game shape so he could pass his physical with the New York Giants, who had signed the wide receiver to a huge 4-year, $72 million contract. He really struggled throughout his time with New York. His ineffectiveness stemmed from an inability to separate from defenders and was eventually replaced on the depth chart by lower caliber players. After just 26 games with the Giants, catching a total of 43 passes for 602 yards and just 1 touchdown, he was finally released. His prime lasted just 2 years, which is exactly why Kenny Golladay falls far short of the Hall of Fame. Vince Young, quarterback. When a quarterback is selected with the 3rd overall pick of a draft, there is an expectation that accompanies it. And while the Hall of Fame might be a stretch, at the very least, a team is expecting a franchise-altering player. And that is exactly what the Titans thought they were getting when they drafted Vince Young. And he did alter the franchise by setting them back a few years. Every NFL player suffers from injuries in their career, and Vince Young was no different. However, the injuries that he suffered over his 6 years in the league in no way contributed to his shortened, lackluster career. Young suffered from knee and ankle sprains and a torn thumb ligament. None of those are exactly career-threatening. There were several other issues that impacted Young's career, starting with a strained relationship with head coach Jeff Fisher, who did not want to draft the young quarterback. He also endured mental health struggles, struggling with depression and having suicidal thoughts related to the loss of close friend Steve McNair. And finally, poor financial decisions led to him eventually filing for bankruptcy. After parting ways with the Titans, the quarterback played sparingly in 2011 with the Eagles before signing with the Bills for the 2012 season. He was cut by Buffalo before seeing any game action. Despite a promising start to his career, Young was out of the league by 2012. Carson Wentz, quarterback. When Carson Wentz entered the NFL in 2016, it was clear that he had star written all over him. After throwing for over 3,700 yards in his rookie season, Wentz was having an MVP caliber season in 2017 before suffering a season-ending knee injury. While he was out recovering from said injury, backup quarterback Nick Foles stepped in and led the Eagles to their first Super Bowl title. Replacing a quarterback who was still on the roster, which led the team to a Super Bowl, adds another layer of pressure to a player returning from injury. Wentz returned for 11 games in 2018, flashing signs of his former self before returning to the starting role full-time in 2019. Concussions unfortunately sidelined him for part of the next year, but he still managed to lead the league in interceptions and sacks before being benched for Jalen Hurts. A move to Indianapolis for the 2021 season seemed to revitalize him, as he threw for over 3,500 yards with 27 touchdowns. However, his struggles at key times, including failing to win in the season's last week for a playoff berth, led to a trade to Washington. From that point on, Wentz has become a journeyman backup quarterback in the NFL, spending time at the Rams, Chiefs, and currently being the 3rd-string QB in Minnesota. Man, how the mighty have fallen. Vic Beasley, outside linebacker, defensive end. Vic Beasley was selected by the Falcons with the 8th pick in the 1st round of the 2015 NFL Draft and was immediately inserted into their starting defensive lineup. His rookie season was nothing special, and the word bust began to circulate in some circles. Any concern was put to rest in Beasley's sophomore season, as he led the league in forced fumbles with 6 and sacks with 15.5 on his way to earning first-team All-Pro and Pro Bowl honors. His production dipped the next 2 seasons as he finished with 5 sacks in each one, yet Atlanta elected to let him depart in free agency. He signed a 1-year deal with Tennessee and began his tenure there by reporting late to camp and failing his physical. Beasley would only play 5 games for the Titans before they released him, and he latched on with the Raiders for another 5 games. His combined numbers with the Raiders and Titans: 10 games, 4 tackles, 0 sacks. His career was done after only 6 short years. Was Beasley a potential Hall of Famer? Well, the world may never know. Eddie Lacy, running back. Eddie Lacy burst into the NFL in 2013, winning the AP Offensive Rookie of the Year award when he rushed for 1,178 yards and 11 touchdowns. If things worked out right, Green Bay had a future star. Unfortunately, things did not work out. He reported to training camp in 2015 out of shape and overweight. The back faced criticism from within and outside the organization, and his play began to suffer. His final 2 seasons saw him average 129 carries, 559 rushing yards, and 2 touchdowns per season. The Seahawks took a chance and signed Lacy to an incentive-laden 1-year contract. Those incentives didn't work. Lacy still dealt with conditioning issues, and he had career lows with 179 rushing yards and 0 touchdowns. Jimmy Graham, tight end. This will probably be the most controversial selection on this list, as the issue ultimately comes down to whether or not Jimmy Graham is a Hall of Famer or not. At this point, he's probably a borderline candidate, but his inclusion on this list would indicate that we're kind of leaning towards no. As a member of the Saints, Graham did have an incredible peak from 2011 to 2014, in which he averaged 89 catches, 1,100 receiving yards, and 12 touchdowns a season, including leading the league with 16 TDs in 2013. A 2015 trade to the Seahawks saw a dip in his production, primarily due to Seattle's run-heavy offense. 2 years in Green Bay and 2 more in Chicago did not revitalize the Titans' career, and he chose to sit out the entire 2022 season. The shortness of his peak, followed by the drop in production, really weakens his resume. Larry Johnson, running back. It took until his 3rd season before Larry Johnson proved the Chiefs right for making him their first-round pick in the 2003 draft. The running back posted dominant back-to-back seasons in 2005 and 2006, rushing for 1,750 yards and 1,789 yards respectively. Kansas City suspended and eventually released the triple back for insulting his coach on social media and making homophobic comments. His departure from KC led to short stints with Cincinnati, Washington, and Miami, but he was essentially non-existent at each of those stops. Le'Veon Bell, running back. There has to be other players who did more self-inflicted damage to their careers, not drug-related, than Le'Veon Bell. But you know, he ranks fairly high on that list. 5 fairly dominant seasons with the Pittsburgh Steelers had shown Bell to be an all-pro running back and a possible future member of the Hall of Fame. 3 seasons with over 1,000 rushing yards, 3 Pro Bowls, and 2 first-team All-Pro honors, Bell was heading for a huge payday when his deal expired after the 2017 season. When the running back and the Steelers could not agree on a new deal, things quickly turned sour. For the 2nd time in 2 years, Pittsburgh placed the franchise tag on Bell. Rather than play the season for $14.5 million, he refused the agreement and sat out the entire 2018 season. As a free agent the next year, Bell signed a 4-year, $52 million contract with the Jets, but struggled almost immediately. His first year in New York proved that he was a bad fit for the team. His production plummeted, and after only a year and a half, the Jets released him. He then spent the next year and a half bouncing around from KC to Baltimore to Tampa before calling it a career. Bell bet on himself, but ultimately lost. Dez Bryant, wide receiver. The first 3 years of his career, Bryant looked like a future Hall of Famer, surpassing 1,000 receiving yards a season and leading the league in touchdown receptions in 2014 when he also received first-team All-Pro honors. Things began to take a downward spiral during the 2015 season. The primary reason for this was a quarterback change in Dallas when Tony Romo retired and was replaced with Dak Prescott. For some odd reason, Bryant was never able to develop the same chemistry with Prescott that he had with Romo, and his production began to slip. The Cowboys released him after the 2017 season, and the wide receiver signed a 1-year deal with the New Orleans Saints when he was injured during the preseason. Albert Haynesworth, defensive tackle. Coming out of Tennessee after being drafted by the Tennessee Titans, Albert Haynesworth was a hulking defensive tackle, standing at 6'6" and weighing about 335 pounds. For 7 seasons with the Titans, Haynesworth became a dominant force on their defensive line. By the 2007 and 2008 seasons, in which he earned back-to-back first-team All-Pro honors and selections to the Pro Bowl, he had established himself as one of the most feared linemen in the game. Upon the conclusion of those 2 great seasons, Haynesworth signed a massive 7-year, $100 million contract with Washington. At the time of his signing, he was the highest-paid defensive player in the game's history. It looked like Washington was getting a cornerstone defensive presence, but things rapidly fell apart. Prior to his first game in D.C., the Redskins changed their defensive scheme to one that did not fit Haynesworth's ability. As a result, he frequently clashed with the coaching staff over the scheme and his playing time. These clashes then led to the defensive tackle refusing to show up to off-season workouts, reporting to camp out of shape, failing his conditioning test, and eventually a suspension from the team. The 2011 season saw Haynesworth traded to New England, and he again clashed with the coaching staff, was released, and signed with Tampa. But the career of one of the biggest free agent busts ever was officially over. But hey, what other NFL player was on a Hall of Fame trajectory before falling short due to their own ability? Were there any other names that we should have included on this list? Let us know in the comment section below. If you liked this video and learned a thing or two, then hey, clicking the like button helps us out a ton. And you know, we really appreciate it. If this is your first time coming around to TPS though, then subscribing is a great idea, because we put out videos like this every single day. But as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.